Hey everyone, welcome to my first ever top 10 list. I decided after hearing enough people say, there's not really a list of the top bills we should collect, I thought maybe I should be the one to put that out. Well, there's no way I could put out a top 100 list without having a couple other lists to go on. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put out a number of top 10 lists. This is going to be the first one, and as you guys can see, there's this little white pad up here. If you guys suggest a list to me, your YouTube channel will be featured right up here as the person, quote unquote, sponsoring the list. You suggest it, I'll make the list. This is one of my own doing, so that piece of paper is just going to be blank. But if you suggest a list and I put one together, your channel name will be right there. All right, so what is the first list I decided to do? I decided I was going to take on a fairly simple challenge, if it was possible, which was the top 10 small-sized $1 notes. So when it comes to the top 10 small size $1 notes, are there 10? That's what made me scratch my head. And, well, let's take a peek. At number 10, I have what most of you have in your wallet right now. This is the current $1 bill. No big surprise here. And if you're going to start collecting currency, what an easier way to do it. Open up your wallet and you're there with the current $1 bill. However, if you're going to have a current $1 bill, maybe the one you want in your collection will be something similar to this. Something that's got, 7 of a kind. Or maybe a repeater or a radar or some type of fancy serial number. Even something as simple as a star note would be good. But yeah, number 10 on the small size note would be the current $1 bill. For number 9, we're getting a little bit older. If you search currency, you'll know what this is. This particular note is a 1963 Barr note. The 63 Barr note, Joseph Barr, that's his name right there, Joseph W. Barr, he was only the Secretary of the Treasury for 30 days, which didn't leave a whole lot of time for these notes to come into circulation. The 1963 series was the first series of this particular type of bill, and when either the treasurer or the secretary of the treasury, when those names change, that's what causes the serial to go from 63 to 63A, and if there's another change, it would be 63A to 63B, and that was the case here. Joseph W. Barr was only the Secretary of the Treasury for 30 days, so the B series, the 1963 B series, extremely rare, extremely short printed. Does look like your standard note. You can find them in circulation. I find quite a few of them in circulation, and that should be number 9 on your list. Number 8, I talk about these all the time, and most people don't even know they exist. You can still find these in circulation as well. This particular note looks like a normal small-sized $1 bill, but if you take a look right there, you can see that teeny tiny little number 4 right there. Next to that is supposed to be a letter indicating the location on the page, the location of the note on the sheet before they cut the sheet. However, it only has a number, which should tell you that this is not a normal note. This is actually an experimental note. This is called a web note or a web press note. It was printed on a continuously fed web press, just like they do with newspapers. And of course, the way you find it is looking for that single little number right there. There's also an indication on the back as well. Right here is where it's got the plate number, and next to "In God We Trust." On all other notes, that number will be down here. So those are the two ways to identify a web press note. What's on the back there, and right there. That's number 8 on my list. These start off $10 to $15, and if you find one that's a star note, it could work its way up to a few thousand. Yes, they're available in circulation, and yes, you should definitely have one of these experimental notes in your collection. Number 7 on the list, I've got a silver certificate. This particular one happens to be from 1935, 1935D to be specific. It does state silver certificate on the top. The blue in the federal seal and the blue in the numbers also give it away as a silver certificate. $1 in silver payable onto the bearer on demand. Has the standard back that you're used to seeing. The only thing it doesn't have is In God We Trust. These are readily available at most coin shops. At most coin shows, you can get these fairly cheap, $3 to $5, maybe a little more depending on condition. This one's actually really nice. But also one of the first notes you should be able to get into your collection. Definitely an affordable note. So that's 10, 9, 8, 7. Number 6. Number 6, technically this would be the same note. This is from 1935, a 1935A to be more specific, but this particular note was one of the first examples of an experiment by the government trying to take care of our money. And what they did was they took a certain number of these notes and they stamped a red R on them. And the red R indicated regular. What they did was they wanted to test how certain prints and certain paper coatings would react. So they needed a test sample, and they put a bunch of R's, these red R's, on some notes, put them in circulation, and then they put out the experimental notes with them, and they designated those a different way. And then after the experiment was over, they could recall all of the R notes and see how they the wear patterns were on those. So the R note from 1935 should also be on your list. These can start getting up there in price a little bit. Not too bad. These are still probably, $20, $30, $40 depending on condition, maybe a little more. But yeah, 1935A. That brings us to number 6 on the list. If you're going to have the R note, the regular note, you're going to need the S note. This is the S note right here. That S is part of it. Let's just look real close and you can see that is part of the bill. This one is one of these special notes. That's what the S was. Special meaning that they treated the paper, they used a different treatment on the paper to see if it would wear better or worse. Now, if you compare any two notes, you're not going to get any kind of idea. But if you took 1,000,000 of these and 1,000,000 of the other ones, and then started comparing their average wear, you'd start to see a result. So the S note is the other half of that experimental batch. Next up, number 4 in this list. Number 4 would be the 1934 silver certificate. This one is different than the other silver certificates. As you can see, it does have the $1, the number 1 numeral in blue ink on the side. This is the same in 1928 as it is in 1934. But what makes this note so interesting is this particular note is known as the funny back, and for obvious reasons. The funny back was only out in those two series, so once you got into the 40s, 50s, 60s, and people would have straps of these bills, only the 28s and the 34s would have these backs. They became known as funny backs. I like them not only because of the back, but I really like this design here whenever you've got the number imprinted in blue like that. That's one of my favorite notes. Number 3. This is emergency currency from World War II. This particular note was emergency currency from Hawaii. You can see it lists Hawaii on both sides. You can see the brown symbol here, the brown Federal Reserve seal, brown numbers, brown serial number there. It does say Hawaii here, here, and it is written on the bill on the back as well. This was emergency currency just in case Japan ever invaded Hawaii and raided all the cash. With the swipe of a pen, we would be able to invalidate all bills with a brown seal, thus making it impossible for the Japanese army to spend any of the confiscated money. So that's emergency currency from World War II, 1935A. Yep, 1935A silver certificate. Number 3 on my list of small size singles to collect. Number 2, from the same vein, this is the World War II emergency currency known as the North Africa note. Much like they did with Hawaii, the North Africa note used a gold seal, and once again it was to prevent the Axis armies from stealing cash. So this was in use in North Africa. $1 silver certificate, familiar back, no In God We Trust on it. But by using the gold stamp on it, that was able to be recalled simply by the swipe of a pen, saying that these were illegal. They never had to be struck that way because they were never confiscated that way, but this was the stuff that we used in World War II in North Africa, the North Africa note. And number one on the list is the 1928 Red Seal legal tender note. 1928 legal tender Red Seal. This note, they only made less than 2 million of these to start. Of the 2 million, these were released in Puerto Rico. So getting one in the States was tough in 1928. But to have one now is even tougher. It's probably one of the more expensive notes out of the entire group here. This one's going to start at about $100 regardless of condition. And a star note from the Red Seal 1928 series could run you $1,500. So that would be number one on my list as far as the small size $1 notes go. All right, if you guys learned anything new this week, go ahead and hit that like button. If you agree with my list and my ordering, go ahead and give me a like as well. And if you have an idea for a list that you'd like to see, put that down in the comments. Like I said, anyone who suggests a list and I do the list, I will put their name up here and it will be forever memorialized in their particular list. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next week.